All right, well, I'm gonna call, the chair's gonna call the meeting to order. Well, Mr. Vaughn will be joining us virtually, but we do have a quorum, so. Ms. Ruff, you wanna call the roll, please?
You can call the roll and I'll just document. Yeah.
Dr. Dodson,
Here.
Mr. LaFave.
I'm here.
Mr. Fry.
Here.
And the chair's here. Okay. First item is approval of the agenda, which is in front of you. If I can have a motion to approve the agenda as written.
So moved.
On favor, signify by saying aye. We got a copy of the minutes of November 13th, our last meeting. We had a chance to review them. If I could have a motion to approve them, or if there are no amendments.
So moved.
Second. On favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you much. All right. Announcements, you want to do announcements, Mr. Long, at the end?
Sure.
For information.
Yeah, so I know one of the big topics is what's the status of our last two board member appointments. First of all, I wanted to just share that Mr. Dillard indicated he was in DC for work, and so that's why he's not present tonight.
Okay.
And then we might be seeing Mr. Vaughn join here online here at some point. But in terms of the last two appointments, the application window closed on November 17th. And the deputy clerk council let me know that that's slated interviews for January, time in January. So those members would be joining the board for the first time at the February meeting.
February. Okay.
Yep.
Not the January meeting.
Not the January meeting, because I don't think that'll happen before. I believe our January meeting is the 8th, so it's early in the month, because I think the first falls on a Thursday.
Yes.
So that kind of made it in terms of their time scale on the holidays. But then that will give us a full 8 members, which is great.
Do you happen to know how many candidates they're interviewing?
So there were 5 applications and 3 have been selected for interview. Yes, based on those applications. And other than that, that's pretty much, I think, everything. So
assuming council finds 2 of the 3 acceptable, then the likelihood is they would be appointed.
Correct. Yep. The next item also is mine, parking garage access changes. So the parking garage is changing how it does the gates system. The system's changing to become more modernized, more digital. And it's a system where it requires you to put in your license plate and it scans the license plate as you enter and exit. And so the office, and for board members, I have a special code that applies those charges to the office. So there's a process of getting you set up, just added to that system. And we can do that kind of, this is going to be some like trial and error. I have to figure this out too for myself as I come in next week. I'm in a different part of the system as like a daily user with the city. But we'll see how it works. And just make sure that next time we talk, or it could be tonight, if you know it, I get your license plate. And that way I can add you to kind of our validation system as board members to validate in the process. So
as I understand it, you'll need the license plate of each board member, and then you'll enter it, and then they'll just be able to drive in and out.
So and this is some of the stuff I have to test. I'm pretty sure it has to be validated each time, and it's validated. You basically would come into the garage, you're in the garage, and then when you interact with me, you get the validation. You scan a code, or I can manually put in the validation for you, and then when you leave, it covers you. So it's still a manual process, because it's basically it can't just be whenever. You have to interact with me in order to,
because there has to be a meeting or a legitimate board
purpose.
function.
Yeah, I mean any legitimate visit to the office that's related to board stuff counts as that. So and that's true for visitors too. If there's visitors to the office, sometimes meeting with community members, I can do that for them as well. So it's not just the board members, but it's any official work can be validated. So that's good. So I'll give you some more details on that. It's not much other than needing your license plate, and then we can set it up. And then the independent counsel update. Do you want to share about that?
So as you know, the process is that the city attorney's office is screening potential attorneys as potential outside counsel for the board. We haven't had that in well over a year. Last I spoke with Ms. Wimberly, she and Mr. Murphy were down, I think, to 2 law firms or individual attorneys, I'm not sure, and the third being considered. So of the 3, they will make a recommendation of either an individual attorney or a firm or attorney within a firm. And then we'll meet with them and decide whether or not we find them acceptable. We'll negotiate fees, of course, because that's going to be a potential sticking point in terms of what our budget can manage. But whereas historically we overused our outside counsel, there's been a shift in the utilization rules such that only if there's a dispute between the board and the city. In other words, the city attorney will represent us in all matters that don't involve us in an adversarial position with the city. Should we get into a situation with the ordinance or some other aspect of our duties where it becomes a contentious, then we would include our outside counsel to represent us with the city, and the city attorney would represent the city. So any questions about that? So hopefully we'll know that by the first of the year. I know they're busy there, but they assured me that they're getting down to it. James, did you add anything?
No, I think that's kind of where we stand until we hear a final options for the board to select from. Then, and I will say, just we do have budget for the attorney. As far as I could foresee into the future of what the needs would be, we should be fine.
Yeah.
So I don't perceive the budget from attorneys' fees being an issue.
Yeah, I mean,
but it's still a major factor, obviously, in selecting.
I mean, the last time that we had outside counsel, I think the bill for that year was in the tens of thousands. So
that was a lot around like policy creation and review, which
well, it was also involved the attorney coming to our meetings, just sitting here from Richmond and driving back. We really didn't
not necessary.
It was just kind of building their hours. So we're going to dispense with that type of representation.
Yeah.
And what we'll do is bring a recommendation to the board once Mr. Walker and I have had a chance to interview them, and certainly anyone else on the board that would like to sit in on that, you're welcome to. Once we get to the point of interviewing the individual attorneys, you're free to join us. I'll make that time available to everybody. Just we can have a brief interview before we make a decision. We're not bound by the city attorney's recommendation. We can always say, bring us in every name. All right.
Sounds good.
So first public comment, if anyone, Kate, you have 3 minutes.
Do you, can I come up there?
Sure.
Or sit there?
If you want to sit,
Mr. Walker.
I don't
I
have the
think that-
clock, but I can kind of just say we're limited
Okay.
to 3 minutes. So
And we're being taped, right? So
Yes.
I should
And
speak
Kate-
loudly.
I don't know if you know, this is a little different than before we kind of changed it so that there's 2 opportunities. Just wanted to make sure you saw that.
And I might want to talk again, if that's okay. So I'm Kate Fraley, and I've been following the Police Civilian Review Board when it was a panel in 2018 or something like that. So I've been interested in the development of the PCOB and the bylaws all along. Mr. Walker has a copy of an orientation book that I put together for the very first formal board, and I would encourage you to look at it. And I read that you all are considering or seeing or noticing or believing that there are 3 components, and that's too many, maybe for this size city. At least that's what I read in the paper. So I just wanted to read to you the original people. I would encourage you at some point to invite the original people who started this and did the first development of it from 2018 to 2019, because they were individuals who wanted to do this because they were from communities who were impacted by negative experiences with the police. So and they have a lot to say, or would have a lot to say about what's most important to them from that time, and thinking that it's probably still true because there's still disparities in the city police department in arrests and charges and all those things, stops. So it was really a racial differences in treatment that was being addressed originally, in my opinion. This is all my opinion, obviously. So I just want to read to you that what the elements they thought were critical to successful oversight. One, the need for a CRB with independent authority to review any and all complaints about police misconduct. Two, the need for a CRB with independent authority to conduct a parallel investigation to a complaint, at least under limited circumstances. Three, the need for a CRB with independent authority to assess fully relevant CPD documents and data. The need for professional experience, support staff, and appropriate corresponding budget. Need for public engagement and public reporting. Without these critical elements, the CRB would risk creating more harm for this community rather than less. And I can read the other stuff that I would want you to draw your attention to, but there is very specific in the very original proposed ordinance that these, anyway, it's a long story, but it didn't the original ordinance never was completely accepted by the city. It was changed right away, but they had specific things about what the role of the staff was and what the role of the board was. So
It's given a 3-minute notice, so.
okay, yeah. So may I just read so the board responsibilities in that ordinance were developing and administering a process for receiving civilian complaints, reviewing completed AIA investigations, in limited circumstances, investigating civilian complaints, holding hearings, making findings and recommendations, producing public reports, and issuing policy proposals, and collaborating effectively with community members, oversight staff, and CPD and city officials. At that time, there was a feeling that there were police officers who were doing bad things in the city and never got removed or punished or anything, and that they were still there. So I think the investigation part was heavy and the staff was to do the auditing and the policy development or research.
Thank you. We do have that second public comment at the end. We were trying to try this new method of
Yeah.
having two. So
I think it's great.
Yes.
So you're not waiting the whole time to say something, right?
Or have it only in the front and not be able to comment on what's already happened.
Anyone else for this first one? We will have the opportunity at the end.
2 questions?
So we won't really answer questions during this portion, but
Yeah,
you're happy
questions about the
to
process.
share them.
Just 2 questions. First one, the interviews of the 3 out of 5 candidates, are they public interviews? They're private.
Yeah, we're not even privy to them.
They're not public. They're held by
They're
city.
not interviewed by the.
No, city council.
This is
Oh, I
city
see.
council
They
appointment.
hold the privilege, yeah.
And could I ask how many 8 or 12-hour shifts, excluding Mr. Dillard, how many 8 or 12-hour shifts each of the members present and the acting director have ridden with CPD?
Done a ride along with CPD once.
How many hours?
It was probably 8.
Full shift?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
8.
1 8-hour shift? Okay.
I do not have any.
With Charlottesville Police Department?
Yeah.
Not any 8-hour shifts.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to mine. I have not done it yet.
Okay, any other public comment? Okay. Mr. Walker, I will hand it off to you for the next 2 items, please.
All right, so I'm going to do the screen share attempt here. We'll see how Zoom cooperates. You have items, all the items in front of you. So how is thing to go with?
Yeah.
There we go. So one of the things that was requested that this office put together in the last meeting is just an overview of the various models of oversight. Now, these are developed by the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, NACOL. And they are a national entity that works with over 200 oversight entities across the country. And so we are a member of that entity as well. And so they lay out three main types of models with then a final hybrid model that combines the other three or aspects or characteristics of the other three. So the goal in this document that is being shared is to just to lay out each of the models, what's their key characteristics, what are some of the implications of that model in actually applying that model, and then the current status of the PCOB as it relates to the characteristics of that model. I don't go into any detail as it relates to the status. That is something that I have a lot of detail about, but that's where our conversations will lead in the future. So first is the investigation focused. This really is emphasizing independent and full investigations conducted by the oversight body or by professional staff related to the oversight body. Allows for independent intake of complaints, followed by an investigation, findings, or disciplinary actions and recommendations at the conclusion of those findings. And then strengthens community trust is the primary thing because there is some sort of independent external investigative action being taken that's outside of the internal affairs department related to the police department. So it tends to be the one that is the highest order of authority when it comes to oversight models. Some of the implications are it does require trained investigators. It requires officer and witness interview capabilities. Evidence access definitely requires greater staffing and funding and a more strict adherence to timelines because there are administrative guidelines and policies that relate to how an investigation is conducted, how an officer might be disciplined, the grievance process and appeals process. That's all laid out very explicitly. There's also a collective bargaining agreement. So there is a very tight timeline when it comes to application of an investigative process. And so often this requires the most type of resistance from various entities, also has legal implications that are more substantial, especially in collective bargaining environments. So I marked this one as limited, and there's a variety of reasons why, but one of the main ones is that the board nor the office can compel officer testimony. So it is difficult to say that you can, as a PCOB, can conduct an independent investigation when you cannot interview an officer independently, because that is then removing the due process of the officer. The officer who is the main defendant, if you would say, in the administrative investigation, not hearing their side of the story directly as part of your investigative process. So then that then ties into the discipline recommendation process. How can the board make disciplinary recommendations for an officer that cannot provide a statement about their actions to the board as part of that allegation? So that's a major concern. There are others, but that's one that I use as the main highlight as an example. I also, it's kind of small, but I also put an example of an oversight entity that is mainly focused on that type of model. So in this case, Cincinnati has an entity that is mainly an investigation focused model. At the end, I list some of the Virginia oversight entities as well. I know these are from around the country. So any questions on that one? I always am.
I think there are other problems and prohibitions in that model. I mean, if you really got down in the weeds, it's not just due process and being unable to compel testimony, but not okay.
Correct. That is the primary one, but there are some other limitations and issues related to how an independent investigation will be conducted. Some of that relates to just resources and staffing.
Yeah.
Noticing that many independent investigative models with a full board, sometimes those board members are part-time or full-time staff. They're paid. Other times the staff that are applied to the board have investigators that do that work. So there's a couple of different ways that's set up, but it usually requires more staffing,
More resources. Yeah.
Correct.
Right.
So the auditor monitor focused model. This is where there's an active engagement during the complaint investigations conducted by law enforcement. So monitoring the interviews of officers as part of the investigation done by internal affairs, being able to review the case files, audit the case files. So this is more of a priority for the systemic changes, the policies, the trends, because we're looking at, it's kind of auditing what is being seen in real time throughout the department, whether there are trends in the types of allegations, which we'll look at tonight, coming in, or there are use of force incidents, a trend in use of force incidents, and how that relates to the policy related to use of force. So that's what that auditor monitor focus model is. It mainly is focused on addressing deficiencies in the policies, the procedures, the practices of the department, including training, budget, technology deployment. Obviously, the automated license plate reader system would be an example of an item that could be audited and was being audited. It's that pilot is currently inactive, and so that has stopped at this time. It's not currently in use. So it does require a trained analyst or auditors, people that can conduct data analysis, collect data evidence. Access to records does require a lot of access to records. Moderate staffing, there has to be some level of staffing to do that work and produce clear outcomes and products for decision-making stakeholders. It's important that the product piece be mentioned and highlighted, because one of the things is what is the outcome of an audit or a monitoring activity if there's no final product that recommends a change or a policy alteration or something like that. Training that is recommended for officers, things like that. I marked this one as moderate, if I could just for that last.
Please.
I marked this one as moderate because this is something that the board and the office have done and have been doing. I actively attend interviews of officers, especially for cases that come in through the PCOB office. So I go and observe the interview conducted by Internal Affairs and observe that, sometimes provide feedback, sometimes make notes for my own self that could be discussion with the board. Also accessing systems like Flock, like the camera automated license plate readers. That was a system that this office directly monitored and audited. And so that could be directed, could change the focus and the priority of that audited monitoring, but it is happening. This office also sits on the use of force review panel. So every time there is a weapons drawn or like a taser deployment, a vehicle pursuit, those are reviewed up through the chain of command inside the police department. One of those links in the chain is a panel that involves myself, Internal Affairs, as well as the specialist in that field. Maybe it's the weapons specialist or the tactics specialist, and they give an opinion on the use of force as it relates to policy. So that's kind of an example of that auditing and monitoring actively. Yeah, I'll pause there. Sorry.
No, you answered my question. Anyone else have questions on that model? Mr. Walker?
One thing that so you attend the interviews, but you don't necessarily have the authority to ask questions.
That's correct. So I observe them from a separate room. But as of right now, we don't have the authority to ask questions because that would be, in essence, compelling the officer to answer the PCOB's questions.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
And under Garrity, because I mean, there are all kinds of legal ramifications, but that would taint the interview if Mr. Walker was sitting in and asking questions, because effectively we lack that authority, so we can lose.
Okay.
Garrity is a big topic to dive into in detail, but in general, Garrity is a protection of any administrative employee or any public sector employee during administrative investigations. Basically, it says that under the threat of discipline or termination, as an employee, your bosses can compel you to testify in an administrative investigation truthfully, and none of what is shared in that testimony can be used in a criminal case against you. So it protects that employee, allows the administrative investigation inside the public entity to go forward, but protects the due process of that employee. That information can't be used in a separate criminal investigation. That criminal investigation, if it were to happen, has to conduct its interview evidence information separately. The only way that Garrity, that protection applies to the employee is the authority to terminate or discipline that individual. The PCOB and this office do not have that authority over officers. So we cannot give that protection to the officer when they sit down for an interview. That's why there is no compelling of officers. So that authority exists and extends underneath the chief of police. So the chief of police gives that authority to his internal affairs department. They then can provide that Garrity protection when an officer is compelled to testify to them, if that makes sense.
And that really ends up being a significant barrier to our doing our own investigations, because without being able to interview the officer, it's kind of becomes an exercise, It's going nowhere.
Okay, the review focused model. This one is where you see the vast majority, the hybrid is really the majority, but review focus tends to be the predominant under that hybrid across the country. This is the model that most oversight entities are. This is more of a quality assurance function. The board would review and basically Monday morning quarterback is the common term of investigations conducted by internal affairs. So after the fact, investigation has been wrapped up. The board is reviewing that investigative file, watching body cam footage, reviewing the investigative process, the interview of the officer, all of that, and then giving an opinion or a recommendation as it relates to policy, practice, training. That wouldn't directly involve disciplinary recommendations because that would have happened already as part of that investigative and finding timeline. So it provides an accountability mechanism over the police department's process, but it wouldn't be a direct engagement in an investigation or monitoring of it necessarily. So prioritizes transparency into the existing procedures, requires access to police records, minimal or moderate staffing and funding, because there's not as much that needs to be done. It's more of a collection of the records and then presentation and preparation for the board kind of thing. Must produce clear outcomes and products for stakeholders. Same way, what if the board is reviewing investigations, well, what are the products and outcomes that are expected of the board for those reviews? And then finally, the hybrid, which is a combination of any or all of these characteristics across the board. The PCOB is a hybrid entity. Oh, and I'm sorry, I skipped over. Review focused, I indicated developing in that regard because that is a conversation that we have been having about getting to the place of the board practicing the review of internal affairs investigations, especially ones that have come in through the PCOB office. So that way the board, as well as this office, start to get in that practice and exercise that practice of actually getting a case file, reviewing the body cam footage, and the board giving in an official opinion recommendation on that process. And so has that really happened up to this point? No, not in the sense of how it was intended, but it can. And we have everything in place needed to do that. There's just the matter of planning and time that are needed. So then jumping down to the hybrid really quick, just a combination of different characteristics. The PCOB is a hybrid model because it includes all of these. The PCOB has authority under all three models right now. I would say that primarily the office is focused on the audit and monitor aspects, and the board could be focused mainly on the review aspects. The board has done policy reviews. That has been something, the board was doing reviews of the license plate reader policy in the past year. Then we lost quorum before that was ever able to be carried to a final product. But a lot of times the hybrid model might be a combination of two of these things, like the office is the audit monitor, which informs the board to conduct reviews. That's how you see a setup a lot of times. Or the office is the investigation entity, and then the board reviews those investigations. A lot of times that's how the setup is. So we're all three right now. So it requires trained staff, access to police records, a lot of the same things. Still important to have outcomes. And again, I list developing because our goal, as we've been having conversations in monthly and our weekly meetings with Dr. Fraser and Dr. Dobson, is to move some of this work forward that the board has the authority to do. Whether that's reviewing case files from internal affairs or auditing different systems, trends, and data, or looking at specific policies. The goal is to carry forward some of the work that this board is authorized to do. And then lastly, I just have there at the bottom, you can see some of the hybrid models within the Commonwealth, Alexandria, Arlington, Richmond, and Fairfax. I didn't go into detail about what characteristics they have. I could in a future thing if we wanted to do that or compare. But then the review focus models, Norfolk and Virginia Beach. So there's several other entities in the state. They all have different ordinances and they're set up in different ways and different resources and funding. So they could be used as models. Charlottesville was the first, if not one of the first, or it could be the second. But so, you know, we were developing an ordinance really in the framework of the Commonwealth of Virginia from scratch, you know, and that those, as Ms. Fraley spoke to, some of those original members were developing it without anything to base it off of. All right, I'm gonna pause there. Any questions or discussion about the models of oversight?
Just a couple of thoughts if I could, and then see if other board members have thoughts or questions. What we're gonna need to do is come up with a broad model to, we'll be meeting again with council to recommend changes to the ordinance that are workable, because the current model is not. I mean, that's pretty, 6 years we haven't had a single hearing, which speaks to the unworkability of the current model. So the council has asked us to make a recommendation of a model which we think is both workable and robust and effective. And so that's part of why I asked Mr. Walker to put this presentation together so we could begin to consider what that would look like. One of the considerations is at this point we have a single staff member, paid staff. I mean, we're budgeted for 2, but until we get a permanent director, there's not going to be any effort to hire that second person in the office. That's one thing. The other thing is, I can tell you from the one mock hearing we did a couple of years ago, that these reviews are incredibly labor intensive to ask of a volunteer board. So what I've suggested to Mr. Walker and for us to think about is where, as he is reviewing all of the IA cases as they come in, and if they're fairly routine, okay, but if in his judgment they are there's some question or some concerns, he would then put together a packet with the relevant body cam footage. So we don't have to look at hours and hours of it. I mean, I spent a Saturday here, 8 hours looking at body cam footage. And took about 4 cups of coffee to get through it. But, and then also the relevant records and witness statements and so forth, which we would then as a board, for confidentiality reasons, go into closed session and review, and then come out, make a recommendation back to the department, back to the chief. Would it go to the chief, Mr. Walker? Is that the presumption?
So recommendations from the board would go to a couple different entities. They would go to the council. They could go to the council. It depends on the type of recommendation. They would definitely go to the chief, and they would also go to the city manager.
Okay.
So that kind of lays out those three audiences.
So the idea would be we would continue to focus on procedural and policy, and I think Mr. Walker and Dr. Dodson will speak to that a little bit in a minute, because they especially have been spending some time looking at that. But in addition, we would add this oversight function, which we really, I mean, Mr. Walker's looking at the cases now, but the board's not involved. But we need to get the ordinance in a position where we are authorized to do that.
So the ordinance authorizes you to do all these things right now. It's just a matter of where do the limitations and barriers exist. I would say that there's limited barriers when it comes to reviewing cases that are conducted already by internal affairs. So that's why we talked about trying to move that process forward, more of the review process forward, because there's limited barriers versus the independent investigations. That's where the most barriers exist. So.
Other questions, staff, comments from the board?
I just want to kind of openly think and speak here to say that, thinking about what was spoken about earlier in the public comment, I think that, I could see some of the public being disappointed by, diluting perhaps what the vast things that we could be doing. But I would encourage them to stick around if they're watching to a recording of this, because hopefully we'll get into the many things that we're trying to very specifically address and do, because I think it will actually comprise what some of the interests are of the public, which is a model very similar to honestly conducting sort of extra work and even investigations in a certain interpretation of the police department and its relation to the community. And so I would just really say that even though you might not categorize it within very clean boxes to say this is an investigation focused model, we're leaving that model or whatever you want to call it, I would say look at the concrete actions that are being proposed and the plan that's going to be proposed, and honestly look at the months of work that's going to be done. And I think I would really encourage people to question whether or not they're satisfied or not with that plan and those actions, rather than getting so caught up in the labels and the names. When in reality, hybrid is likely what's going to be, some sort of hybrid is going to be what is in actuality. So hopefully that makes sense to, again, folks who can't be in conversation with me and on video, but I'm just trying to really make, because I know that's something that's really a incredibly, passionate subject for folks. And I appreciate that it was spoken about here as a representative of those voices, but I would just say read past the titles of things, read into the descriptions of what's actually happening, what's changing, and more importantly, look at the work that's being done and investigate that when it comes to the board's work. Because I think my hope is that we're going to be doing a great deal of it. Please push back if you disagree or.
I just wanted to add that one of the things that I have said many times from the moment that we had that initial joint meeting with city council and continuing up to this point is that as this process occurs, the whole purpose of this is to set context and understanding around the current authorized duties and work of the board, as well as the limitations, to then be able to carry forward changes as needed so that the board produces more outcomes that the community intended for it to produce. The goal is to actually produce greater outcomes, not less. And that's why I say in many of these clearly that part of what is missing in that ordinance is defining and clearly explaining what are the outcomes that the board is authorized to then produce and what is going to be done about those outcomes, whether they be recommendations or opinions of any kind. Who is the audience of those outcomes? What actions do those individuals have to take? So the goal has always been to codify the work more clearly and to focus it so that it is actually accomplishable by the current structure of a volunteer board and an office with 1 or 2 staff members. That's the goal.
Mr. Lefebvre, Mr. Fry, any questions or comments about where we're headed with this?
I think I'm on board.
Okay. Go ahead.
So I do have one other file in here that I share with you. I'm not really going to spend much time on it, but it's relevant for some of this discussion, and it does get into a little bit more meat of this whole topic. And so it's that one that says executive summary at the top, and then NACOL's 13 principles of effective oversight, civilian oversight. So this is a list of 13 principles that NACOL identifies as things that an oversight entity needs to consider when thinking about its work, thinking about policy or its ordinance governing documents. And so you can read through those and see all the 13 principles. But following those 13 principles, there is an evaluation. Now, this is a combination of the former director, Inez Gonzalez, some of the writing that she had done, as well as another pass through by myself, and just giving a current status ranking of where the board and office stand in these areas, and then providing a little bit of clarity and detail of why that ranking or status was given. This is obviously very surface level. There is more depth to all of these things, but I just gave it a ranking of 1 to 5, with 1 kind of being non-existent or minimal, up to 5 being extremely successful and operational. So as we kind of go through independence, I talk about some of the lack of clarity on the role of the office and the board. Some of that we resolved in those last round of amendments to the ordinance, establishing an office, laying out some of the duties specific to the office versus the board. So this is a 3 out of 5. Like this is in development, and there with the future intention of the city council to have another joint meeting with the board. This is something that can continue to develop. So I don't view 3 out of 5 as bad. I view that as sustainable and developing. Clearly defined and adequate jurisdiction and authority. So one of the things I mentioned is there are several documents which govern the work of the board. There's 4 actually, and I'm not going to dive into them, but within those documents, there are conflicts There are disagreements between and among them. There are conflicts and disagreements between the PCOB's documents and other city documents, and sometimes also including state code and state documents. So one of the reasons that there needs to be continued work on the ordinance is to clean up and clarify those types of conflicts that exist. I have a lot of that information detailed very specifically. It's just not provided here because that is very much in the weeds at the level of where conflicts exist between certain documents. Unfettered access to records and facilities. I rank that as a 4 out of 5. So this office is currently provided with really the most access of any oversight entity in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I want to recognize very much and thanks to the Chief of Police. Chief Kachis has been extremely open to giving access to this board through the office to everything that we have requested up to this point. From the license plate, access to the license plate reader system to be able to audit that, to access to body cam footage, to be able to review that as well. So with that said, the reason I ranked it a 4 out of 5 and a 5 out of, or a 5 out of 5 or not a 5 out of 5, is that there's still a lack of some codification of that in the actual documents. So one of the questions that has been asked, it's been asked by community members and board members, is if there was a changeover in the leadership of the city or the chief of police, could that affect our access? Yes, in some extent, yes. Because there's a standard operating procedure that the chief authorizes that defines how that access is done. Our ordinance requires the department give access, but it doesn't really define how that access is meant to be given. So we have very free and easy access right now through the office, but that could change unless it's made more clear and specified in the ordinance. So that's why
If I could just comment on that, Mr. Walker. Case in point is that this chief's predecessor gave us low to no access. I mean, the door was slammed shut. So it is very much a function and at the discretion of the current chief. And so without putting it into the ordinance, we're at the mercy of whoever's sitting in that. Go ahead.
Oh, that's a great comment. And again, it is in the ordinance from the perspective that it does say that the board is to receive full access to these records. It just also indicates that there needs to be an agreement on how that is done. And so that's where the sticking point can come into place. Access to law enforcement executives and internal affairs staff. So again, I would have ranked this a 5 out of 5 if it weren't for just formalizing it in the ordinance, because we collectively, the board members as well as the office, have great access. The chief has invited any of the board members as well as myself to go to their internal community statistics meetings where you can interact with the command staff. Someone I work with on almost a daily basis is Lieutenant Vaya, who's the commander of internal affairs. So that is a great working relationship. And we need those relationships to access information. That's critical. I know that there's times when that collaborative approach can be viewed in certain lights from being too close to the police, but in order for this board to have access to information in police, we have to coordinate with them. That is critical. It's a must because they're the holder and the authority over that information, whether it's body cam footage or other records.
Yeah, I was just going to comment. So, I attend have attended the monthly ComStat meetings and not in my police civilian oversight board role because of, the relationship that I've built with the chief in my scientific role for the last several months. And I can see that as a critique in a bad thing and a good thing from a lot of critics kind of perspectives. And just again, to give my response to some of those critiques, I would say the board, I believe, should comprise a varied set of perspectives that have varied viewpoints and might have even be covering their blind spots. So while I might not be looking, even though I'm looking as cohesively as I can into into a scientific and objective approach, as I think the community and its employees really want, I'm going to have blind spots, right? that might come from someone who might have a completely different perspective from me, who might not ever want to be in that meeting for ComStat with police, right? And so I'm only saying that to comment because I could imagine people once again listening to this and thinking, oh, okay, so the PCOB is working with the police in this very cordial way. It's like, well, like James said, that is a necessity. However, the board members themselves do not have to share the same perspectives regarding policing or public safety, and should not, from my perspective, as an individual member of this board, I do not think they should. And I would love to see other members who are on this board who actually have a very different philosophy than me, in perspective than me when it comes to policing. I would love to see those people here, and I would love to see that coverage in our blind spots. Because I care about the community. That's the reality of it. Sorry, long-winded, but I just
Well
want to
said.
make.
It's a great, yeah,
Yes.
great other side of the point, yep. Full cooperation, 3 out of 5. This is simply due to the fact that there's a lack of compelled testimony. So in some ways, based on our ordinance and what the board is authorized to do, we don't technically have full cooperation to do those things. And that's not because of any specific animosity or something. It's just how the current structure and challenges exist. Sustained stakeholder support. So I rank this 2 out of 5. Limited stakeholder support is provided to the board with limited advocacy and engagement from external organizations. I don't want to indicate that that has never been the case or that there is no one who does. There are individuals and organizations that do stay very engaged with the board, with the office. It's simply meant to say that it's limited and it's inconsistent. And it's not very broad. It's a limited set of people and organizations. And so that could be really built upon. And part of that is the goal of the board as representatives of the community to engage in those organizations' discussions with advocacy groups and individuals. But one of those also important stakeholders is the council. And I do want to give that focus or that due of the council has been engaged in having these joint meetings. They've had one and have expressed a great interest in having a second. And so that is developing as well. Adequate funding and resources. So the current resources of the office factually are insufficient to carry out the full mandate of what is listed in the ordinance. That's just true. There's no other way around that. This has been looked at quite a bit, and it's been recommended that there be 4 full-time staff members if carrying out the full scope of the ordinance. Mainly that would focus on a director that manages the board and the day-to-day of the governance of the department or of the office, as well as an analyst reporting type role, which is what my role was before made acting. Then there would also be community engagement individual, and then possibly an investigator who would actually conduct investigations if the board was having independent investigations done. So that's kind of where those 4 came from. Obviously, right now we have 2 funded positions, 1 individual currently in the office. Public reporting and transparency. From the board's perspective, I rank this a 4 out of 5 because since my time here, I'm coming up on 2 years in this office. The focus has been to put out way more information, way more reporting, annual reports, monthly reports. Some of that is lacking. There's a lot more to do in that area, but that has been the goal of myself just as an individual, because reporting is what I've always done. Data analytics and reporting is a lot of my background. And so continuing development of the website and putting out resources, making things more transparent and available to the public is an important thing for me as well. And I believe that the board shares in that sentiment in many ways. Policy and pattern analysis, currently functional but limited with staff capacity. That's just, again, would be kind of that management analyst role, managing and auditing data. Community outreach, the board and the office have done a good amount of community outreach, but it hasn't, and one of the discussions we've had is it hasn't really been targeted and with a mission and purpose. And that's a lot of what we're going to get into tonight with some of this plan. And so that's why it's a 3 out of 5, just the need to target and focus that and actually what do we bring back to the work of this board from the community? And how do we get that to come back? Community involvement, I'm glad to see several additional people in the room this evening. As the board knows, that's been inconsistent over the years, so oftentimes it would have been just us in the room. But
Can you speak to if it's ever been more than like 3 to 5 people physically in the room from your knowledge?
Rarely.
in my time here, the only time that has happened is when students from a specific professor's class have been here. That's the only time I've ever seen that.
Yeah, and sorry to speak up on that, just again, for me, that's kind of pretty big, because my thought is if you really want to say something and be here to speak on it, I appreciate the folks who have the time and are able to make it out here. I know that's challenging in itself, but I really just appreciate hearing from and seeing other people. I think all of us do, and we want more engagement from anyone, especially those that might have frustrations or challenges that we can start to address.
And we have, just as a great point to mention, we have a collective email that goes to myself and all the board members, which is pcob@charlottesville.gov. Very easy email. And it's also, you can see that on our website. There's another submit message link there as well, but pcob@charlottesville.gov. This goes to everybody on the board. Confidentiality, anonymity, and protection from retaliation. So there's some aspects here. The board follows a lot of confidentiality standards as it relates to police department information. We are not the holder of those records. The chief of police is, by state code. And so there is an aspect of the chief identifying what could and could not go out in some aspects from police department information. But with that said, the chief has been, like I said, very open about getting some more transparent data out, and through this office. And so there is still some limited practice in how we would do reviews in closed session, as well as if we ever got to the point of doing hearings, that would still have to be worked out. So again, I've marked that one as developing. There's some good stuff there, but there's also some things to figure out. And then lastly, procedural justice and legitimacy. There is a lack of enforceable mandates in the ordinance that cause lack of legitimacy or perceived legitimacy. So again, some of it comes down to the board being able to conduct an independent investigation that includes compelled testimony. Some of that comes down to, okay, the board has a recommendation. Well, what is done with that, or what is required to be done with that recommendation? These are some of those aspects. And then also talking about some of the barriers that prevent the board from conducting those full investigations. There are limitations and conflicts with our own document as it relates to other documents in the city that define how police officers are investigated. So I know that took some extra time, but my goal is to kind of layer this context. That starts to provide some more context. And really the next level beyond this is to actually sit down and look at the ordinance and go through the conflicts and show them and describe them. And that may be something that we get to at some point, or it may be something that members who are interested engage in behind the scenes between meetings. But that's really where it comes down to, because those documents are the laws of this locality. And so they really are the root of where things have to be reviewed and looked at and revised. So, all right, that is the end of that.
Any questions for Mr. Walsh? Okay.
All right. So the next thing, a little bit more interesting than heavy text. And I think everybody here will find this interesting as well. Mr. Fry had requested seeing some of the allegation data. Oh, why is it not? Hang on. Should be up on the screen, but it's not.
Yeah, the mouse isn't even moving. I don't know if you see that.
Oh, yeah. I think because I had
There you go.
oh. This is where I lose the controls. Hey Remy, are you able to break my screen share? Because I can hide all the controls, but then I can't get them to come back up. Thank you. It's like either way, I found that it works better when it's share the. See, when I hide these, they go.
Yeah, then it's doing this thing.
Yeah, I'll get rid of them, but then it's hard to get those things back.
Yeah. Maybe you can see that.
Hide floating, there we go. It's gonna go away in a second. Takes a second for it to update. There we go. Okay. So what I have here, I'm gonna start with 2025, is some visualizations of the complaint statistics from internal affairs. So I had done 2022 through 2024. That is included in the 2024 annual report. There's a lot of visual charts in there that break a lot of this down in even much more detail than what's here. But what I did is I got the most updated information from Lieutenant Vaya about 2025. And so combine that in. So I have 2025 separated on its own tab so we can look at that separately. And then I have all of the years 2020 through to the present. So first, just the complaint source. You see external versus internal. This is 2025 up to this point. External means it's come from outside, whether it's through the PCOB or the Internal Affairs Department has received the complaint directly themselves. Either one is counted into that. So there's 46. Internal is from within the department. So whether it's a supervisor or another officer that has an administrative complaint against another member of the department, that is considered an internal complaint. So you can see the breakdown there about 60-40. I'm gonna skip the findings because that really should be after the actual allegations. So these are the allegation types. Now, an allegation, this is just what is identified in the complaint, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean this is what happened, whether it was adjudicated to be, yes, it was a sustained thing. It could be unfounded. It could be not enough evidence. That's when we get to the findings, but this is just what the complaint identified.
And just to be clear, this is the first time, this is what is iterated by the complainant.
Yes.
And also, can you kind of, I don't know if you can speak to, are there times when someone might try to rescind like a complaint, and in that case, this isn't changing, right? The labels aren't changing. It's still like, no, this is the first.
Correct, because that actually would be identified as a finding of withdrawn.
Mhm.
Yep, so that would include that. Now, this does include that there's different terms for it, but it could be like a collateral, basically allegation, which is that when the investigation is being conducted on the original complaint, other things are discovered by the Internal Affairs Office and are added as an allegation against that officer.
Yeah.
So there could be others that get added that are beyond the original complaint. That tends to be more rare, but it does happen. So you can see courtesy is number one. And there are policies that lay this out in the police department of what each of these terms mean. So to really dive into those, we would have to open their policy and review that policy. Unsatisfactory performance, unbecoming conduct, excessive force, respect. You can kind of see, obviously, courtesy and unsatisfactory performance are the top two. Some ones here in the middle that come up from time to time, but then there's a lot that are just single incidents of it. So, you got truthfulness, workplace intimidation, arrest without a warrant, harassment, abuse of authority, just down the list, and that's just one. So just showing you that breakdown, this could help the board to identify areas to focus on as it relates to policy and practice of the police department, as an example. Then I get up to let's see what else I have on here. Let me go to this chart. These are the findings as it relates to all those allegations. This is what was the result of that investigation. Unfounded means that it was investigated and there was just no evidence that allegation was true based on the evidence. Sustained means, yes, it was identified as there was evidence that allegation was true. Not resolved is more of like there's not enough information. And exonerated, to clarify that from unfounded, exonerated means more that, yes, the allegation was true, like, yes, what the complaint alleged happened, but that is within policy, that the officer did follow the policy and that was allowed. So Exonerated could be an area that's focused on as a policy change because those cases, there's a complaint, but the officer did follow the policy. And so they are exonerated from that. Pending, you can see there's 3 cases that are currently pending right now in internal affairs. So they're in investigative process right now. Any questions about that finding breakdown?
All sorts of questions about this, but I don't want to.
Yes, I know.
I don't want to derail the meeting.
I want to show you the annual trends because there's actually some really interesting things annually. So here are the total allegations. Now, again, this doesn't represent the total case count because a case can have multiple allegations in it. A complaint could have 2 or 3 allegations. It could be 4 officers in that complaint that each have 1 allegation each. So this data is the just individual count of allegations across all the cases. You can see 64 in 2022, 51, 58, and then this current year 74. So again, doesn't mean that there's more complaints in 2025. It could just mean, and I can give you that data, but it could just mean that there's more allegations per complaint, if that makes sense, or more officers that are being alleged against. Complaint source by year. So this shows the external versus internal complaints. The darker blue is the internal within the department. So you have 41 external and 15 internal from 2022, 32 versus 12, 35 and 19. And then this current year, 46 versus 28. One point that I want to note is that there is a trend of increasing internal investigations. Now, the board can make and the public can make opinions on that. One of the things that says to me is that there is an increased culture of accountability inside of the department, because otherwise you wouldn't have internal complaints. The public doesn't know about these. These are happening from inside of the department and they're being investigated. Now, you can have opinions on what are the outcomes of those and stuff, and we'll look at the findings, but they are increasing, right? And so that is a data point that is to note. The external allegations are also increasing as well. So that's important to see there too. And then here's the overall finding distribution this is across all 4 years, 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025. You can see there's almost an equal representation of unfounded versus sustained. So almost 50% of all allegations within the internal affairs department are sustained, 42%. That's pretty high. It's just a general opinion. That's pretty high. That shows a culture of accountability, in my opinion. If there were, if it was 90% unfounded, that would obviously cause more questions to be asked about that. But again, that exonerated field, there's 20 exonerated, meaning that the allegation was true, but the officer did follow the policy. So that could be a focus of where the board looks at policy. And then
Is there a trend that you've noticed on areas where exonerated shows up a lot?
I don't know that off the top of my head, but I do have that data. We could look at that and dive down into it. And then these are across all 4 years. These are the top allegations across all 4 years. So unsatisfactory performance, courtesy, conformance to law. This happens more in internal investigations. This is the officer following the law in their life as an individual, and reporting it if there's an issue to their command staff. So as an example, if an officer got a DUI, right? They're out driving around on their own time, they're off the clock, but they got a DUI, they need to report that to their command staff. If they fail to do that, that's part of this process is conformance to laws, is the officer conforming to laws that they're held accountable to. Versus there's another one, it doesn't show up on this top list, which is called constitutional procedures. That is an officer following the law when they are dealing with a member of the public in their work. So those are 2 different things. Unbecoming conduct, truthfulness, excessive force. So you can kind of see the breakdown here. But it's interesting that unsatisfactory performance and courtesy tend to be much higher than the rest.
Yeah, once again, I could talk data literally all day, but you know, I suppose once for folks who are trying to engage with this, their question might be, and maybe this is perhaps a segue. You know, how can they get to this? You know, can they look at this on the website at all, or is this publicly available in a way like even if in its draft form? I'm curious if your response on that.
So what I'll say is this, and actually the next item on the agenda is for you to
That's
go to the website really quick. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna actually point to some details and what I've been working on in terms of the website,
Mhm.
which admittedly has been less so since I've been by myself. So let me actually pull that up really quick, and actually if I have this tab open, that's an easy way to.
Any questions about the data from the board before we move on to the website? Is that, one of the Sandra and the.
Yeah, that's, I don't,
Okay, great.
You just wanted to see trend.
So I just wanted to show the website really quick. Yes, I selfishly put my own face on there because I'm the only face that there is. So yes, it used to, Inez used to be in that spot. All right, so this is the main page, and there's a couple links right here that take you to some of the same things on the side. But this is for the board as well as the public to just see. Meeting videos, also on the side here, board meetings, those go to the same thing. That's where you can access the recordings, these sessions, the live recordings from YouTube, as well as the internal server that the city has. And that's where I also try to get the links posted to the board content. I'm pretty sure I'm behind on that, so I'm gonna work on that. But let me go to that page really quick. You can kind of see it's like a breakdown of each year to access the agenda, the minutes, the board documents. I've got to update 2025. These things still exist. They're over in the board's agenda, like the council agenda list, the calendar. But I'm just linking it to make it easier for people to go find those. And then the live streams are below. So once this one's done, you can see it says live right now for tonight. Back. Then when it comes to data and reporting, that reports tab are on the side here as well, data and reporting. So this is where a lot of that information, like Dr. Dobson was just talking about, some of the stuff I just showed is being placed. So monthly reporting, I've got to add a lot more of the 2025 monthly reports, but the goal was to start just dumping reports as they were made into this format. The main one that I would point most attention to that has by far the most information is the 2024 annual report. And it takes a long time to load because there is a lot in it. But it includes that 2022 to 2024 complaint data. It has a lot more detail related to it. I'll let that work on opening. There's also some other information down here in this appendix that I continue to try to add information to, just give some of our policy documents, other documents that have been worked on, how to see policy recommendations, presentations. So yes, a lot more attention needs to be spent on this website, but this is the kind of transparency that I love to do and get this information out for the public for consumption. So this is the annual report. It has a section, it's very extensive. There's a lot in this, but it has a section that is all about the data from the department. Sorry if, hopefully I'm not causing any, I mean, it has budget information about the police department, budget breakdowns. It has, here's all the complaints that came in through internal affairs, just listed.
Yeah, it's all really explicit, transparent, and perhaps overwhelming for some people who might not want all of this all at once. So I think, you know, for that reason, I don't think, hopefully people are not discouraged from reaching out and saying like, oh yeah, I want to know about this thing. I'm sure, James, you would be like, oh yeah, look at page 12 on this plan, because you have that almost memorized at this point.
And one of the, I think what you're trying to kind of say is how to bridge that gap too, is I would love to just put some just general graphics here that are easy to access and you don't have to dive into some report. Some of these types of graphics just easily available right on the website, right? And so that is an absolute goal of mine. And to have a area where those are just easy to flip through and see. You don't have to go dig around or dive around for it. There's also the file a complaint tab. So this is where all just the general information, I really want to update this page. It's very basic. But there's an online portal. This online portal is called Civil. There's a complaint form. It goes directly to the PCOB. So this is a PCOB's complaint form. There's also our information to call. That number goes right to my desk, right there. So you can also visit the office, which is right there as well. This is another tab I had been working on about like the PCOB's ordinance policy and things like that, where there's just different drop downs where you can actually access the specific documents if people are looking for them, past resolutions of the board, things like that. And then this is a pretty much empty page that I got to work on. This is some old stuff that was sitting on the website. So for historical context, there's some interesting things in these documents, but this resource library is pretty old. So you can kind of see, definitely website's in a state of transition, but I'm working on it, been working on it for over a year now, just slowly adding and developing things on it, trying to make it look a little more pretty, things like that. But all right, well, that comes to the conclusion of my section. I'm sorry I took so long. I just wanted to make sure you guys had a lot of context and information
Yes.
that was requested. So Remy, can you stop my share?
Thank you, Mr. Walker.
Because I struggled with it. Thank you.
All right, item 7, board member discussion and activity items. There's been some work done primarily by Mr. Walker and Dr. Dobson on drafted work plan. Do you want to?
I would love to go through it. I'm gonna try to do it.
That item is in front of you. I'm not displaying it right now because it is in a very draft form. It is in the agenda packet, so it's still accessible publicly, but it is just in a draft form. So it's very rough right now.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I'm so excited about this. It's you know, it's a lot of work to do this, but I'm really excited about this vision that we're trying to put together for a new process that's very transparent and hopefully exciting for the public to see, hopefully exciting for the police department to see as well. I think this is something that could actually unite all of us together in a way of just trying to make everyone much better. And so to speak to that, and again, this goes to the earlier comment that was made. I think I was doing a lot of thinking in a process that would make sense to put the community's concerns first, but do that in a way that there is some kind of document of experiences that we can look at, you know, sort of an evidence-based way of looking at what is the community's concerns and how do we address them cohesively and intentionally each month. So this is a monthly cadence that we'd go through. I'm a very visual person, so I wish I had a visual of this. Eventually it'll come through.
Oh, like the one that we were working on, yeah.
Yeah. But essentially what we did is we looked at a process that I'll go through in about 4 steps abstractly. And for those here, it's on the second page on vision for PCOB work plan process.
I'm going to be taking notes too while any discussion occurs.
And jump in as you see fit. So it starts with seeking understanding. The idea being we want to do our best job of understanding the community's experiences with the Charlottesville Police Department and regarding public safety broadly, right? Because sometimes there might not even be direct interaction with the police department, but there might be a complaint that the police department isn't present for particular public safety concerns. And I believe that should still be, as I'm interpreting the role of the PCOB under our purview to have some sort of comment and perspective on. So if people are complaining about a lot of public safety challenges that are, or well-being challenges in their neighborhoods that the police are not addressing, then I think it's worthy for us to be able to raise those complaints and challenges to the appropriate parties. But anyway, first point, seek understanding. That would be using methods like canvassing, surveys, listening, interviewing, etc. It could also be just referencing past work that's already been done, historical documents, things like that. It could be really anything. But this would be done ideally in locations like community events, town halls, neighborhood groups, really anywhere that the community is present. And especially, I think we're all very interested in trying to figure out what are those areas where the community is present. And how do we best represent the community's experiences and concerns and thoughts as well as we can. So that's that first section. Then there's an analysis stage, so conducting analysis, which would be utilizing the shared community experience to understand themes, context, and focal points for any oversight work. So that would be collating all those experiences that we are listening to within the community, right? And trying to have internal discussions similar to this, but probably in smaller groups, so we can act with more agility within the PCOB to attempt to understand and interpret those experiences. Then the third of the 4 stages is prioritizing work. So after we've actually understood what the challenges are, let's say it's license plate readers and something regarding that, then we would we hear a lot of different things, but license plate readers happens to be one of the biggest things that a lot of the community is concerned with from our analysis in December, let's just say. Then what we would be doing is prioritizing what the next month, let's say January, should have in terms of our work through a PCOB effort, right? That could be through a voting process. It could be through just a discussion process until we get to some sort of cohesive consensus. But what we'd be doing is really trying to pull from all those various resources and try to start thinking about what could be done in terms of our authorized work, whatever that is. That could be policy reviews and suggestions for changes. That could be looking at challenges when there wasn't actually good use of, if this is license plate readers, good use of that technology. It could be, a number of different things as we've outlined before in our previous meeting. And then finally, the 4th stage would be after we actually go and do the work in that interim period, reporting outcomes, right? So we do all this work, we put together some sort of report to the public, let's say in February, right? After we've done a January month's worth of work to say, here's where we are, here's what we've done, here's where we're going next, perhaps, but this is what we've done, right? And repeating that process every single month. And so the idea is this would at least face at least 3 different people, 3 different groups, maybe 4, there we go, 4 different groups. The community, so that could be through us telling the community through events or newsletters to the public to summarize the last work of the month, showing any suggested changes that we might have made, let's say 2 license plate reader policies in that example, or communicating with news outlets, right? So it might be a nice way to say, oh, here's what we're doing. We've done this in January. Here's what we're planning to do in February, right? So this monthly cadence to know this is exactly what we've done. Here's what we're doing. To the chief of police, reporting in the monthly ComStat meetings that were already mentioned that we have been present in, but have not reported what we've been doing. And I think this could be a really great way for us to explicitly say, here's what we did. Here's how it relates to you. And to city council, communicating, especially through the office. So the director's role, communicating the effort that we've made to city council. And that could be through a short 5-minute presentation or reports. And then the city manager's office as well. That's the I mixed it up. So that's where the office would be the primary kind of source there is communicating a 5-minute presentation or report to the city manager's office. The city council would be something like the chair giving that presentation. So that's essentially it, me trying to rush through it. But that model, the hope of that model is something that we can all really know. Here's the system that we're going through, the process we're going through. So we have a vision for how are we prioritizing our work? What could I legitimately work on this month? It's a busy month in December. I can only commit to, this much work, but being able to all come together with understanding the community, prioritizing concerns, and then actually doing some work and reporting that back out to the public. So I'll pause there, just to see if that makes sense.
Sounds good.
Sweet.
I think it's a good idea.
Ah, that makes me happy.
Just to add to, this was developed in like an hour of us sitting down, so it truly is a very rough thing. The goal was to share it out and kind of building the plane as it's flying, but the goal is, the whole point of this is to get past that point. Where
Yep.
the plane is built and it's flying and it's fueled and,
Yep.
you know, we got, captains are good and everything, so
Yeah.
whatever you wanna do with that analogy, but, part of this was just trying to talk about how does this process continue and sustain itself, where it's much more clear what the board is working on.
Yep.
We had developed Kyle had developed a very visual, kind of 3-month tier of like, okay, in this month we'd be working on this, the next month this, third month that kind of, and then that process is rotating. So trying to think through a visual that represents that will be fun, I think, actually.
Yeah, and I think it'll be really accessible to the public, which will be nice. I think what is exciting about this era of the PCOB is I think that we are on the verge of something that's going to be extremely exciting and that people are going to be very proud of within Charlottesville, that we are doing the things that a lot of folks want us to be doing. And there will be a track record of exactly how we've done that process. And any time that people have complaints about the process, they will get the chance to really explicitly mention that, so that we can alter it. But this is what at least feels, again, my brain thinks scientifically, but it's just a logic, right? Of saying, we want to know what the public thinks. Let's listen to them. Let's prioritize what they're doing. If we've represented the public well enough, that should help us, and not just by a numbers perspective of, oh, well, the most people are saying this, but perhaps there's one thing that was really, really horrible that we really feel that we should focus on in the next month. That would be the way that we're making the decision of how are we prioritizing our effort? How are we getting that out into the right places so that hopefully something can be changed if we haven't made the change directly ourselves.
And this really goes to the renewed commitment or revived commitment of this board to raise our visibility in the community, to do more outreach, to do more engagement. I think we've been sort of under the radar. We've been spinning wheels for a while just because of the turnover in the board and turnover in the office. So it's really trying to do a reset, a reboot, especially in the new year as we negotiate with council, get a full board. We have Mr. Walker doing a terrific job. So we really do want to just raise our profile with the community, more outreaches, Dr. Dobson referenced. And so look for that because we're really committed to that.
And I think with that outreach, the goal of this is to make it purposeful.
Yeah.
To have it really inform the work of the board. And so I don't know if you wanted to talk about that next section is, I kind of just created some space to just fill in notes, but this was just from a broad perspective of how do we kind of think about what the board does versus what the office does on a broad level. And then the final page on that document is like a calendar for, I made it December to January of, okay, what actual specific tasks could be accomplished by members of the board or the office between now and the next meeting.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, here's the process, here's the general overview of who does what from the big perspective, and then the monthly calendar is setting, here's the specific actions, activities that each board member is potentially capable or willing to be a part of.
Yeah,
And you want to talk about it.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to mention, I'm not going to go through, I think since we all have a physical copy of this, it's probably it's helpful to read through it. But this is a broad description, like James was saying, the non-horizontal side. It could honestly change month to month. But we were just trying to take the categories of authorized work as we at least see it right now, and then trying to say, okay, well, what could we see us doing versus the director versus, some other, group doing. And then in that way, afterwards, here's here's my, I think it's the most important piece of paper right now is just like, what are we actually doing? And obviously these are all in draft as well, and so it's not super helpful here, but we wanted to make it clear that here's what we at least saw as what could be a nice way to round out these very little bits of time we have left in December during holiday season. But if we want to do some work, here's the ways we could do it with looking at the past. Um, and things that you could start writing in as you're starting to see, oh, well, if you're trying to get canvassing, here's what I could imagine myself doing. Or here, if you're trying to get a historical understanding of what has kind of happened within this community, I could see us doing this. Like maybe one of us should talk to, other people who have that history. Or maybe we should look at some of these artifacts or documents that have been given to us, right?
And as an example, the binder that Ms. Fraley had talked about, I have a copy of that. So that provides a lot of historical context. That's something that the board could review as that context.
Yeah, exactly.
As well as many other infinite number of things.
But the only reason I wanted to highlight the importance of this, and maybe this is something we'll handle through asynchronously through messages and whatnot. The only reason I'm really trying to push for this month is because that cycle, that process I talked about requires us to have this cycle of a monthly cycle to, the December work that we would be doing here would then be getting followed up in January, but it wouldn't be even really reported to the public until February. So, in that process, because it takes so much work and effort, we really got to get started, because otherwise, if we do like this model, it's going to be a whole nother month that people aren't going to understand what we're doing, right? Even though we're going to be doing hopefully a great deal of work. And so here right now, we're just trying to understand the public. We've arguably been trying to do that for the past, at least as long as I've been on the board, and further into the past. And so I think it's a good task for December, because it probably won't require too much, rehashing of what the community's highest concerns are. Especially since James has put most of them for 2025 on the screen there. But then January is where we actually are prioritizing what are we doing, and how are we going to do it, and what are we going to do. February is where we actually get to report it to the public.
And I think part of the goal of putting what we put in this calendar quickly was just to really like, hey, here's some possible things that we could try to do. We know that, first of all, it's holiday season, it's winter, which has its own complications, as we've seen with the weather. And the next board meeting is in early January, it's January 8th, so it's going to come quickly. So it's just thinking about, okay, well, this is just an example of how could we lay out a month by month work plan that is accomplishable, that we could actually commit to. And so one of the easiest things that I had mentioned is that second item in the second box down, which is the historical community understanding. I have lots of documentation from the past, lots of opinions, original drafts of the ordinance, and things that a presentation that was given by the original members to city council about the changes that were made when they originally submitted their ordinance recommendations. There's a lot of historical context, a lot. And so that is something that would be easy to access, easy to provide to board members if any of the members were to engage in that could then report on some of their findings or things that they noticed in that January meeting. So that's like an easy thing that could be tackled. Another one we talked about was, part of my fear is the weather and the time of this, but the stationary canvassing on the downtown mall. I'm not 100% sure what the rules are around the city doing that, and like us setting up a table and like just being there to talk to people. I can find that out very quickly and easily. But if there was one or two of us that could commit to that and go do that, I have all the stuff in the office. I've got a banner, I've got a table, we have giveaway items. So that's easy to do, and just try to initiate conversations, collect some of that. So I don't know, did you want to speak to that one?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, just because I to start signing up, and we don't have all of our members here, so I don't wanna have us obviously sign up for everything. But I was starting to pencil in some things, and I could see myself potentially being a part of that. I don't know if anyone else would want to join with me on that. And then also I was gonna consider the going to a community event at a, or, if we can find 2 neighborhood events, which I don't think will be too hard to find in December, I would love to commit to one of them at least, or at least try to. And it sounds like that'll be with James. So as long as James can make it, then I can hopefully go alongside. But yeah, I don't know if y'all have been able to check out these yet. I penciled in Rory's name for creating the glossary of terms because I think he had mentioned it before.
So this was really basic, just like a quick way to introduce this process. Now, what I think between now and January is to keep developing this into something a little more robust, build out some of the other months, clean this up. And then I think it would be good for the board to vote on this is the way that this is our adopted work plan and how we're going to conduct business.
Yep.
Tonight was just an introduction of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
draft because it's really rough. We know that.
Yeah.
But it was a way to start to think about a way to formalize the work of this board. And these were just some quick, easy things that were possible things between now and January to engage in.
I love the model. I wonder if we want to wait till we have a full board and really fully implement it. I mean, obviously, because that'll reflect the division of labor. I
And then
mean,
for like kind of like a ad hoc implementation, just to get the work going, but
Yeah,
but also like formalize it with a vote when there's a full board.
exactly.
yes,
And that's kind of what we're doing right now with this December, January, because it's like
That's right.
showing it to you and then also trying to like get some of this moving so that there's not this 3 months goes by and nothing's happened.
Yeah, and I'll just be on, like, I'm gonna be at the events. I'm gonna try to do this canvassing. That's gonna be effort and work that I'm gonna be putting in. But I'm in this before we're even deciding this is gonna be the process. I'm gonna be there. At least I'm gonna try to be there for that. And yeah.
so I think depending on, and I'm certainly up for community events as well, I enjoy doing those. If folks have an interest or have the time between now and then, just let James know and get it penciled in. You don't have to do it right now, but think about it in the next couple of days.
What I can try to do, and one of my goals tomorrow is going to be to try to identify some of these options.
Okay.
So number one, try to figure out just if any sort of permission or permit requirement is needed for the city to just be on the downtown mall at the table as a city entity. That way we know, and then that we can schedule whenever that works for individuals.
Yep.
So that's easy. That's just a permission thing. But the other one is trying to actually find some of these organizational meetings that occur when and where they occur and reach out to those individuals.
Yep.
I had been developing a list of the neighborhood associations. Yes. So it's just a matter of outreach to them and just trying to set that up or looking around at other community options or reaching out to other organizations. And then seeing when they meet and, hey, if checking with the board, hey, are you available to join?
Yeah.
That's as simple as it is.
That could be a good ad hoc way to do it.
Yeah.
Like that.
And I think we'll get it a little bit more robust as we go, but
Appreciate
this is a start.
the rush effort.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure there's anything actionable tonight on this beyond what we talked about.
Yeah, no, like I said, I just wrote some of my thoughts on the things that I could see myself committing to. But beyond that, I think that's a great plan for, we handle this asynchronously through email, but it is going to be I think, very proactive process. So look for emails would be my only actionable thing.
Well, one of the questions, and then I don't want to, is asking, is there anyone, and would you be interested, Mr. Fry and Mr. LaFave, in looking at some of the historical documents? I can put them in a format that's simple and minimal so that I get a wide selection. And I'll give an example. Last year at there was a town hall, which you were present at that, right? So you were there physically, but there is a report that we had a UVA entity there who actually wrote up a report of all the community feedback from that town hall.
Nice.
It's a couple pages, it's not long, but that's one thing that I could provide that could be reviewed and just see what stands out in that report. As well as some historical documents, like Ms. Braley had mentioned, some of those older documents about opinions of the original founders of this entity and thoughts and concerns related to what they were trying to implement. So if that's something you're willing to do, that's an easy one that I can just provide and tee up for you.
Yeah.
But I don't want to I just wanted to ask if that's.
I think unless it's like, I want to do this right, I definitely know it. I think this is a good one to pin for the other members who aren't here to also be able to weigh in and say if they wanted to jump in on that too, which might be a possibility. Cool.
Because I believe, like you said, Mr. Vaughn had indicated a desire to work on the glossary terms. So
Potentially, unless we misinterpreted, yeah.
maybe, yeah, we'll see. I don't want
Yeah.
to, yeah, but, all right, I'm gonna be
Okay,
quiet.
anything else on this item?
What's your afternoon look like tomorrow?
Tomorrow afternoon, I know I have a meeting, with Office of Human Rights at, I believe, 3 to 4. So I'm available from 4 to 5.
I'm off tomorrow, so I could try and come by around the work.
Yeah, that would be fine.
Look at some of the documents.
Yeah, that would be great. That's easy to do.
Nice.
All right, public comment.
Can I
Kate, you have
speak
another-
again?
Yes, please.
Mhm.
So, just, I have a list of organizations you might want to
Oh,
contact
amazing.
and go to their meetings.
That's so cool.
Especially during the holiday season, I bet they have some. So Legal Aid Justice Center. Sam Heath, I don't know if you
Mhm,
know him.
yep.
Yeah. So, you might want to get on one of his shows or one of his programs and talk about this. Virginia Organizing, the People's Coalition, One Stop Shop. Sorry you missed the Christmas one because it was packed with people. And I think that's every 2 months. It might be every month, but it might be every 2 months. And it's at the Carver Rec. The other thing at Carver Rec, I don't know if any of you roller skate, but apparently Friday nights is packed with people roller skating at Carver Rec. So that's a neighborhood, it's neighborhood stuff. The Jefferson School African American Heritage Center has a holiday thing coming up soon for I should know the name of that, but and then the NAACP would be another place.
Within 2 months ago, so
That's
that's certainly meet with
yeah.
them again. But
Mr. Dillard is their vice president too.
Right.
That's an easy connection and.
And then one concern I have is that originally the first PCOB board members had a thing at the Jefferson School African American Heritage Center where they made speeches. And then people in the audience picked who they liked to give input to the city for who they would like to be on the board. So having the city council always choose who's going to be on the board, I think a lot of that's my opinion. A lot of people on city council don't have the same view you have about having arguments and having controversy and having differences of opinion within the board, which is healthy, I think, really healthy. But I think there has been an attempt, personally, that's my post view on it, is have prevented some of that by their selections. So I think that I don't know what you can do about it because it's probably in the bylaw, in the ordinance, how they're picked.
Well, it is in the ordinance and that's part of the future joint conversation with city council when they sit down with the board again. This is where the board can start to formulate opinions specific to things like how membership is selected.
So at least you all, seems to me, at least you all should be able to have some influence on who is joining your board because you know where the gaps are in your current board. The city council doesn't really know that.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's just an idea. And then places to participate. And I would like to volunteer if any of you want to be personally in touch with any of the original folks. I don't know that I have all their email addresses, but I can contact them, the ones I know, and see if they'd be willing. And then I can give that to,
And yes, that I think.
or I let you know who would be willing to, like, just have a phone conversation or whatever they're
Whatever's
willing
easy.
to do or you're willing to do.
That would be, thank you. That would be
Yeah.
extremely helpful.
Gloria Beard would love to talk to somebody, I'm sure. She loves to talk about it.
Just so to remind the board, apropos that, if there's more than two of us present with a citizen or whatever, it constitutes a public meeting, we have to announce it and go through all the red tape, so. There's no problem with having those conversations, but it would probably be two on ones or 2 on 2s or 2 on 10.
Or
If
one
we
on
only
one,
do
you
two
can
of
even
us,
do one on.
Two of us or one of us at a time without going through all the bureaucracy.
Makes sense to me.
And that would apply to these canvassing things too, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yes, yeah, we're very aware of that. And I was gonna mention also just I think that public kind of speech idea is a very interesting one. And I would almost wonder if that's something that the public still was interested in doing, that you could still submit that in some fashion to say, here's what we did, here's how we held a kind of almost public vote, you know, or whatever kind of vote you want, private vote that was based on this kind of public, you know, display to see, you know, like the people who we think should be on the board, you know, and then city council could decide if they want to use that information or not, but either way, you've at least have a voice there, because I think you've accurately stated like we, you know, the process.
Right.
We aren't interviewing. Yeah.
In the beginning, there was no one on the board, so, you know, it was a little bit different because everybody was selected. So it wasn't as if you were picking one person out of three, it wouldn't. Yeah. So I don't know whether, anyway.
Thanks, Kate.
Uh-huh.
Very good. Very good.
Thank you. I'm
Oh,
excited
yeah.
about you all. I'll
That's
be
a good
showing
thing.
up more.
Thank you. Any other business from board members? Mr. Walker,
Not for me.
can we get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you all, appreciate it. In January, if not before.